The return of a ghost, a mother's fight to save her daughter from a master manipulator. The moment I saw him again, my blood froze, a chill crawling down my spine that I thought I'd never feel again. Standing at my daughter Sarah's engagement party, as if he had never left, was the man who had torn my world apart 7 years ago. The same captivating smile, the same sharp, calculating eyes, and the same intoxicating charm that had once lured me into his trap. He was Michael Reynolds, the man who had almost ruined me, but here he was now, disguised as Michael Sterling, working the room like a seasoned con artist. I felt the glass of champagne slip from my hand. It shattered on the marble floor, its sharp, high-pitched crash like the sound of my heart breaking all over again. Every guest at the party turned to stare at me, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything except stand there, frozen, staring at the ghost of my past. "Mom, are you okay?" Sarah rushed over, her wedding dress-fitting appointment long forgotten as her concern for me took over. "You look like you've seen a ghost." That was exactly what he was. A ghost, a remnant of my past that I thought I had escaped. Michael Reynolds had disappeared from my life in 2018 after taking everything he could from me, including my dignity, my trust, and a hefty chunk of Robert's life insurance money. And now, standing in my daughter's pristine living room, the same Michael Reynolds was engaged to Sarah. This time, he was calling himself Michael Sterling, but the man was the same, the predator, the manipulator, the thief. Only this time, he had his eyes on something far bigger, my daughter's future. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, forcing my voice to steady as I tried to mask the horror that was rising in my chest. But I wasn't fine. Not at all. A widow's vulnerability. I've spent the better part of the last 7 years trying to forget the darkest chapter of my life. In 2018, I was widowed unexpectedly. Robert, my loving husband of 32 years, had a heart attack one chilly morning in early spring. I was a grieving widow, drowning in sorrow, lost in a world where nothing made sense anymore. The house felt empty without him. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to live without the man who had been my rock for so long. It was during this vulnerable time, when I was struggling to stay afloat, that I met Michael Reynolds. I'd been attending a grief counseling group and often stopped by a coffee shop afterward to collect myself. That's where I ran into him. He was sitting alone, reading a book, looking, in retrospect, like someone who knew how to blend in without drawing attention. He struck up a conversation. At first, it was casual, a few polite exchanges about the weather. But then, he started asking me questions. Questions about my life, about Robert, about my future. I was drawn to him. He was attentive and empathetic in a way that I hadn't encountered in months. He seemed to understand my pain, to truly grasp what it was like to lose someone. For a woman like me, whose heart had been shattered, it felt good to have someone listen. But the truth was, Michael wasn't interested in my grief. He was interested in my vulnerability. Over the next few months, he carefully built my trust, layer by layer, until I felt like I could finally breathe again. At 42, he seemed like a man who had his life together, successful, confident, charming. I was 58, lonely, and grieving. He made me feel like I was worthy of love again. He made me feel desired. For a short while, I thought I had found someone to heal my broken heart. But as I would later discover, he wasn't the man I thought he was. The betrayal. For 10 months, he showered me with affection, and I let myself believe in him. He convinced me to invest some of Robert's life insurance money, a decision I now regret every single day. It was supposed to be a business opportunity. He had a sure thing, a guaranteed return, he'd promised. When I look back on it, I see now how expertly he manipulated me. He made me feel like I was the one in control, that I was making these decisions on my own. But the truth was, he was carefully orchestrating everything. He drained my account slowly, and I didn't even realize it until it was too late. It wasn't until I started questioning some inconsistencies, missing paperwork, unexplained delays, that I began to dig deeper. That's when I found out the truth. Michael had been siphoning off my money all along. By the time I confronted him, he vanished. He left nothing behind but empty promises, a string of lies, and a shattered version of the woman I used to be. The return of Michael Sterling. 7 years later, I thought I had finally moved on. Sarah, now 32, was engaged. She had inherited her father's generous heart and his business acumen, both of which made her a target for people like Michael. But I didn't know that then. All I saw was my daughter, so full of hope and love, preparing for the next chapter of her life. I had always dreamed of this day. But now, as I watched Michael, no, Sterling, charm every person in the room, my heart sank. He hadn't changed. He was the same man I had once trusted, the same predator, only now he was targeting my daughter. Sarah had been so excited to introduce me to her fiancé. "Mom, I know you'll love him," she had said. But how could I love a man who had already destroyed me once? I tried to keep it together for her sake. I smiled. I nodded. I shook Michael's hand, but my skin crawled at the touch. The recognition was there, just a flicker in his eyes, but he masked it quickly. To him, I was just a potential obstacle in his pursuit of something far more valuable than a widow's savings. He was after Sarah's trust fund, a small fortune that would become accessible when she turned 35. And with it, he would finally destroy her the way he had destroyed me. The thought made me sick. The investigation. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. I knew Michael. I knew his patterns, his methods. So, I started digging. I hired a private investigator, Patricia Newman, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in background checks. When Patricia called me the next morning, her voice was grave. "Maggie," she said, "we need to meet." We met at a diner on the edge of town. Patricia laid out a collection of documents and photographs that made my blood run cold. Michael Sterling was clean. Too clean. In fact, there was almost no record of his existence before 2020. There were no social media accounts, no professional history, no trace of him. It was as if he had emerged from thin air. "This doesn't add up," Patricia said. "For a man who's supposedly been working in investment consulting for years, there's nothing. No evidence he existed before 2020. It's as if he's using a completely different identity." The name Michael Sterling itself was suspicious. "What's his real name?" I asked. "Michael Reynolds," Patricia said, sliding a few more papers across the table. She had found traces of him from 2018 in Chicago, just before he disappeared. He had been investigated for romance fraud, targeting widows and divorcees, draining their accounts before vanishing without a trace. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. He hadn't changed. He was still the same con artist, only now, he had more experience. And this time, he had a much bigger target, Sarah's future. The plan. As the days passed, I watched Michael's every move with growing dread. He was smooth, calculating, playing the role of the perfect fiancé, the perfect son-in-law, as if he had rehearsed it 1,000 times. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make Sarah feel special. He had already begun isolating her from me, using the same tactics he had used on me 7 years ago, making her feel like I was the one who didn't understand, the one who was standing in the way of her happiness. But I wasn't going to let him do this. Not to Sarah, not again. The problem was, Sarah had fallen for him. She trusted him with all her heart. And I knew that if I tried to expose him directly, she would turn on me. Michael had already poisoned her mind against me. So, I had to do this carefully. I needed to find a way to make him reveal his true intentions. Patricia and I worked quickly. We gathered evidence. We dug deeper into Michael's past, and what we uncovered was even more disturbing. Michael wasn't just after Sarah's money, he had done this before. There were other women, other victims across the country, women who had trusted him, who had loved him, only to be left with nothing when he disappeared, leaving